Hello, I wanted to make a video about Jupyter Notebooks, show you why I like them, show you why I think they're helpful, and show you my favorite shortcuts. Hopefully you'll find them interesting. I'm going to create a new Python data environment Jupyter Notebook. And here we are. I'm going to change this name to shortcuts. And we're in a cell. I'm going to click on the cell. Notice it goes from blue to green. I'm going to click on the cell, put some code in here. I'm going to say my name is Batman. And once I want to run it, yes, I can click here. I never do that. I'm too lazy to go all the way from here to there with my mouse. So I always do shift return, shift enter. As you see, there's no number here. Once I run it, it tells me number 1 because that's the first cell I run. If I want to do something else and I run it, it tells me 2 because that's the second cell I run. If I happen to come back here and run it again, it's going to be the third one, again, the fourth one. Some shortcuts, sometimes you want to put something in between. So yes, you can go and do the plus, but the shortcut is going to happen when your cell is blue. Right now our cell is green, which means we can type inside. If we click outside, it's going to become blue, and that's when we can use your shortcuts. For example, I want to put a cell below this one. I can put the letter B, creates a cell below. If I wanted to put a cell above this one, I can put the letter A, creates a cell above. A, B, B, B. A for above, B for below. And if I want to get rid of them, I can use X. X is going to cut them, same as here, but with the letter X. Is in fact not deleting the cell, it's cutting it. So if I cut this one, for example, I can paste it underneath and paste it as many times as I want. So that's the shortcut for inserting and deleting cells. Something else we might want to do, remember this is a notebook. These cells are not only for code. You can see here what types it can be. I'm going to talk about Markdown now. I feel Markdown is important because sometimes you want to give some style or write some paragraphs. Once you go and make your cell blue again, you can change from code to Markdown with the letter M for Markdown. If you want to go back to code, you can use Y. I don't know why, but it's Y. When you press M, goes to Markdown, you see the thing disappears. That means you're in Markdown. So once you type something, that is plain text, is not coding anymore. And you can put some title. For example, if you put a hashtag, it's going to be bold and big. If you put more hashtags, it's going to put a little smaller. But there are many things you can do with that. For example, I'm going to copy some Markdown I have here. First, I'm going to change it to Markdown, copy, run it, and see. I have some bolding, some shading without bolding. These are images. Looks really good, right? Really appealing to the eye. I like it. For example, maybe we're talking about pandas and you want to put some pandas in there. This supports HTML. So if you know HTML, this is how you put an image. I'm going to put it as Markdown. If you don't know about HTML, don't worry. We'll go over that about in week 11, I believe. And here, some pandas. Super cool. You can type anything you want, make notes for yourself. I think it's pretty helpful. We also have shortcuts for commenting. Remember, we had this in class. This is a comment. You see the hashtag. This is a comment. See the hashtag. We can comment. You don't need to go to the beginning of the line and put the hashtag in there. There's a shortcut which is in Mac command slash. This is slash right here. And for Windows is control slash. So if I click anywhere on the line and I do command slash, that goes from Markdown, from comment to code. If I do it again, it goes again. So if I want to do the whole thing, I can select the whole thing, command or Control slash, and it changes everything from the code to a comment. You know, sometimes you're coding and you don't want to delete stuff, but you don't want your code to see it, so you make it a comment. I think this is pretty helpful. Sometimes you just want this one, so you go to that line. You don't need to go all the way. Of course, this works. You go all the way there, you delete it, you put it in there again, but you can just go to the line anywhere and do your shortcut, and that becomes code instead of comment. Remember to always comment your code. Your future self will thank you. When you're doing your homework, when you're doing your coding, always comment what you're doing. This is very common. Don't let this guy be you. You know, when I wrote this code, only God and I understood what it does. Now God only knows. It happens to everybody. You are in a hurry, you just write, and everything works, so you're happy. 6 months from now, you come back, have no idea what the code is doing. If you're curious about more shortcuts, you can go to Help and see all the keyboard shortcuts. Everything is there. If you don't like one of the shortcuts, you can change it to your own. I never change it. I think that's confusing, but you're more than welcome to change anything. If you think that's going to help you, you can edit keyboard shortcuts, and here you choose which shortcut you want to use and just change it to whatever you want. Okay, now let's play with Python. Let's import our usual suspects. And do I remember how to read a CSV? I don't. So what am I gonna do? Now I'm gonna get help from the tab key. This tab key, tab autocomplete, super helpful. I know it's PD dot something, but I don't remember. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna click the key tab, and it's gonna tell me everything that I can do. All the commands are gonna be there. So if I remember is read something, I can put in there read, and I click tab, and it tells me all the files I can read. And there is read CSV. Super helpful also to call files. I know this is how you call the file. You put the parentheses, you put it as a string, but I don't know what I have in there. So if you do tab, it's gonna tell you everything that you can put in there. You see, that's one of my notebooks there, my other notebook. I know I have a resources folder, so I'm gonna put an R in there, and it shows up right there, resources. I don't know what I have inside my resources. I don't remember the name of my CSV. Nobody does, right? You go back and check the name. You don't have to. If you press tab in here, you're gonna see what's inside that folder. I want my CSV. I'm gonna run this cell, and there it is. Super easy. Now, whenever you have an output, this is an output, right? You're seeing something, that's an output. Whenever you have an output, that means you have not done anything. Nothing has changed. Pandas is showing you what you're asking. So this is not changing anything. So let's assign this to a variable. So I'm going to assign this to data frame name that is long and I don't want to type. Why am I doing this? To prove a point, right? I assign this is my data frame name. Ridiculous, right? But if I do, for example, day AT and I press tab, it auto-completed the whole thing. I didn't need to type it. And my data frame is there. What if I do DA tab? Same thing, auto-completed the whole thing. What if I do D tab? Now there's plenty of things I can do, but I can choose from them. You see, my first one is a data frame. I can have many names and I don't have to type them. For example, this also works with the column names. What if I wanted to do the preferred position? It does not only save us time, but you know, typos are always going to happen. I don't know if there's a space in there. There are capitals, no capitals. I don't care. I'm gonna put a P in there, press tab, and it tells me which columns I can call. And it's right there, I don't need to type it. If I call that, it gives me the column right away. Super cool, right? Okay, now I'm gonna rename my data frame just because I don't like that long silly name. And remember, we did count to see how many values we have per column. If you want a little more information, you can also use info. It tells you the columns, how many non-null values you have, and also the type. As you know, sometimes it's important to know the type. And if what your concern is only the null values, you can do is null. You're asking the data frame, is this null? And it's gonna give you a data frame of booleans, true, some false. Not very helpful, right? This doesn't tell me much, but if I apply a sum to this, super helpful. Tells you how many nulls you have per column, because it added the nulls. Sometimes you have only one or two missing values in a random column. From here, super hard to tell. You have to compare all the numbers, make sure you're not missing any. From here, it's super easy. You see right away which ones are missing. And if what your concern is how many you have overall, you can just apply the sum again, and it tells you. So now let's drop them. How do you drop them? I'm not sure. It was something with drop. So let's do drop and put a tab. Press tab. Once you press tab, you see the options and you see, oh, drop NA. As soon as I see it, I remember. So let's do drop NA. Now, do we need any parameters in there? Not sure, right? The right way to do it is go to the pandas website, the documentation, figure out. But in Jupyter Notebook, you can also tell. If you do shift tab, it tells you the parameters, the default parameters. You can click in here and it tells you more information. Or you can do shift tab and it tells you the information there. For example, how takes any and all. The default is any. If you put any, this is what happens. If you put all, this is what happens. They give you even examples at the end. You see, and cool examples. Look, Batman examples. So let's drop them. If we drop them, what happens? We have an output. What happens when we have an output? Nothing has changed. Pandas is showing you how it would look if you drop everything. If you want to store this, there are two ways to do it. You store this in your data frame. It can be the same data frame. It can be a different data frame. Or there's also a parameter that you can put in here. It's called in place. If you see it here, in place equals false by default. It means that if you use in place equals true, this will happen. So once I run it, no output anymore. That means something has changed. And I'm gonna check my nulls here on my data frame. 0 nulls. So this dropped everything and it stored it right away on my data frame without having to assign it to itself. Let's try to do something with our data frame. Let's try to change this ST to striker. We're trying to rename something, right? So maybe rename something. Let's tap autocomplete. Rename is there. Okay. What goes inside of there? Shift tab to check. Shift, the key shift, and tab. Columns is there. We want to rename a column, so we're going to use columns. How do we use columns? Columns, dictionary like. Okay, so we're going to put a dictionary. Columns equals a dictionary. We're going to put st in there, column, and we're going to change that to striker. And this is how I run the code. I run this and see my output. Again, if you see output, nothing has changed. But I want to see if this is exactly what I wanted. My st changed to a striker. Perfect. So now I'm gonna assign this to a data frame, either itself or a new one. If you're gonna assign it to itself, make sure your code works first. We usually in the solutions assign it to a different data frame and then output it underneath, that's fine. But if you are going to assign it to itself, which is fine too, make sure what you're doing is correct before you run it. Otherwise, if you did something you didn't intend to do, you're already overriding your data frame before checking. And once you see that it's not what you wanted, then you have to go back to the beginning and run all your cells again. By the way, you can just go to cell and run all above, run all below, or run all cells, because your data frame will have changed. So I like to do the code by itself and see if that was what I wanted. Once I see the output and I'm sure that's what I wanted, then I assign it to something. Just some advice, because I've seen many students getting into trouble for changing something they didn't intend to change, and it might happen to you. One last thing I want to mention is the styling with Python. For example, if I want to do a for loop for I in range 10, when I press enter, it immediately gives me the right indentation. But what is the right indentation? I'm not sure. Is it a tab? Is it spaces? It's actually 4 spaces, not a tab, not 2 indents, not 1 indent. How do I know? There's a website, PEP8. If you just Google PEP8, it's gonna take you right to it, and you can see all the documentation for Python. Indent, so use 4 spaces. They tell you tabs or spaces. Anything that you want to know about the styling in Python, it's here. I see a lot of people using variables like this. This is a variable. That's not how we write in Python. If you're gonna put words, you have to separate them by underscores, and all of them should be lowercase. This is a variable. Of course, it's gonna work if you do it anyway. It still works, but this is not proper grammar, basically. If I am working in Python and I see capital letters, right away I'm thinking about classes, which we will do later, so it might be confusing. Try to use this, which is called snake case. This is how we write in Python. If you have several words, you separate them by underscores, and they should all be lowercase. Anyway, we continue here. If you only use one space, guess what? This code is gonna work. They even put it in red, like telling you, hey, will you please write this correctly? Because it's not correct. It's still gonna work? Yes, it's still gonna work. Is it correct? No, it's not correct. I don't like it. People will not like it. If an employer sees your code with grammar mistakes, just like anywhere, if you see a paper with grammar mistakes, it's gonna be frowned upon. That's it. I hope this was helpful. It's challenging when you start with a new programming language because you don't remember everything, but Jupyter Notebook and autocomplete are gonna help you when you don't remember. Try to follow the proper guidelines. Always comment your code and have fun coding.